everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be discussing my birth story number 3. Alright, let's get into it. It is early July, and we had just gotten back from vacation with my family in Zion, and we had just started trying, I guess. We had, our youngest at the time had just hit 18 months, so we, started planning, I guess, for another one. And we get back from vacation, and I remember I'm like, I'm just gonna take a test, I'm a few days out from when my cycle's supposed to start. I just want to see. So I take a test. I see a faint line show up, 2 lines. And so I go and show my husband, and I'm like, I guess this means we're having a 3rd baby. He just laughed and was like, oh my goodness. I did take a test 2 days later just to make sure, and the lines were definitely brighter that time. So I was very early on. I would probably say 3 to 4 weeks. I feel like I track mine very to the T, so I find out really early on in pregnancy. I guess you can say I'm a planner in that way. I just like to know the minute I can know, I want to know. So there we go. I make my first OB appointment. Normally they want you to come in at like 8 weeks. I know I wasn't able to get in right at 8 weeks. I think I was a little past 9 weeks. So I was 9 weeks and a few days. But I had started bleeding somewhat at around the 6-week mark, and it wasn't fresh blood. It was a sign of like old blood. I feel like anytime you see blood, even though they say it's normal during pregnancy, you get worried. I mean, it's a normal thing. So I called and just kind of asked them their opinion on what I should do. The nurse that I spoke to wanted me to go in and get blood work done. I was about six weeks at that point, and so I went in, got blood work, and she told me she would call me back and just let me know to check on my levels. And I got my results back before she called me, and I was looking at my levels and they were extremely high. And I'm like, oh, that's a good sign, at least, knowing that I actually am pregnant. But I get a call from the nurse, and she's like, so I have your levels here. And I'm like, yeah, they're really high. And she's like, yeah, so we want to bring you in for an ultrasound tomorrow. And I was confused just because I know they don't do ultrasounds that early on. And she's like, we think you're further along than you think you are. And in my head, I'm like, no, I'm not, just because I know I track things very well. So I'm like, oh, okay. And she's like, and I'm like, there might be multiple. And she's like, yes. And I just started to laugh. So they had scheduled me to come into the nurse's clinic the next day. So I called my husband and said, they scheduled me for an ultrasound. The 2 girls are gonna have to stay with you tomorrow. They want to bring me in and, check on some things, because they think I might be further along than I am saying that I am, or that there might be multiples. And he didn't believe me at first, but again, he just started laughing and was like, oh my goodness. And so for about 24 hours, there was a possibility that I thought I was having twins. So that, you can imagine, was a little bit shocking and a bit exciting, I guess. But I go in to my appointment and get an ultrasound, and honestly, I didn't care if there were 2 heartbeats. I just wanted to hear 1, just because after initially seeing that blood, I was nervous. and the doctor comes in, starts, does the ultrasound, and she shows me the screen, and she's like, see the flicker? That's the heartbeat. And I'm like, okay. And she goes, and you're right, you are about 6 weeks. And she goes, let's see if we can hear the heartbeat. And sure enough, like, I heard the heartbeat, and I'm like, one? And she's like, just one. And I'm like, okay. So I leave with pictures, and she's like, I'm putting this as a viable pregnancy. So I call my husband, let him know that there's one heartbeat, but we're excited, just happy that the baby's okay. They determined that I had a pocket somewhat from my last pregnancy that was just old blood, so that it was just getting out of my system. So that was nice for them to like reassure me that it was nothing to worry about, and having to do with this baby. So fast forward a few weeks, and I go in for my first actual OB appointment with my OB, and the first thing I ask her is, I calculated, and my due date was March 21st, 2022. And I did want to schedule a C-section, just so my husband and I can be somewhat prepared, just because our last 2 deliveries did not go as planned, and we wanted somewhat to plan things or call some of the shots, I guess. So the first thing I asked my OB was if I can schedule my C-section for March 17th, which, if those of you who don't know, it is St. Patrick's Day. And she looked at me kind of shocked, and she's like, oh, yeah, I'll put it in the notes right now. So, that was exciting, and she just thought it was funny that I had already like planned a date, and she put it in, and so basically I just wanted to make it to that day, just because I thought it would be really cool to have a baby on St. Patrick's Day, and my husband's Irish, so we loved that idea. So time goes on, and we're getting ready to welcome our 3rd baby into the world. We didn't announce it I didn't announce it on social media. Our family knew we were having another girl, and honestly, we don't care. It didn't matter to us. We said that 3 kids was our max. We were dead set on that, but just as time was going on through the pregnancy, I really felt like I wasn't done. My body, this wasn't my last pregnancy. It was just something that I felt. I don't know. I love being pregnant. I know a lot of women don't feel the same, but it's just, I love it. My husband jokes that I'll never be done having kids. I'll never feel like I'm fully done having kids, but we'll see. So one day I told him, as I was walking up the stairs, I don't think this is my last pregnancy. I just want to let you know. And he was shocked, because we had chosen our name that we had picked for a boy since we were 16 years old. Talking about kids, we had picked the name Jameson for a boy, but we decided, since number 3 was supposed to be our final baby, that we were gonna use it just because we loved it. And he's like, well, we need to come up with another, if we do, we need to come up with another name. And I'm like, if that's your biggest worry, then we're okay. But we are chugging along, we're doing all the things, we get through Christmas, we get through the new year. My husband got promoted actually he found out on Valentine's Day. So about a month before the baby was coming, so he started in a new position right before the baby came. But he had taken the day off. He was taking 2 weeks off of work and starting the day before my scheduled C-section on the 17th. So it was a Wednesday. He had taken off, and then he was going to take, 2 weeks from there. So that day we're getting everything ready, making sure the house is clean, cleaning out the car seats, cleaning out my car. I'm doing all the things, vacuuming the stairs, just making sure the house looks nice for when we get back from the hospital. And also my mom was coming to the house too, in the morning. So we didn't have to wake our girls up and drop them off somewhere. So she was going to come, let them sleep, and then when they wake up, take them to her house. But I'm back. I vacuumed my car. I vacuumed the car seats, getting everything ready, and we're getting ready to go to bed. And it's about 10:30 Wednesday night, and we are supposed to be at my doctor's the next morning. We're supposed to check in at 7. So, we're getting ready for bed. I have all my stuff set out for the morning of. I was supposed to use this wash to just wash my stomach and get ready for surgery, prep for surgery, I guess. And, I brush my teeth, using the restroom before I get into bed, and I use the restroom, and I notice that I'm bleeding. And this is like bright red blood. So, of course, I turn to my husband and I'm like, I'm bleeding. And he's like, what? I'm like, I'm bleeding. I don't know. I don't know what to do. And so, the first thing, this is the third time around, and I still get nervous, and I still don't know what to do in these situations. And so I call the labor and delivery triage, and they tell me, they ask me, can you feel your baby move, or have you felt her move? And I feel like I did feel her move during the day, but in that time, like, you just panic and you're like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't know when's the last time I felt her move. So I started panicking. And they're like, well, why don't you just drive to the nearest hospital? And that way they can check you out. And I'm like, I have an appointment tomorrow morning for a scheduled C-section. And they're like, okay, we'll just drive to the nearest hospital. They'll check you out. They'll make sure baby is okay. And then, go from there. So I get in my car and I drive to the nearest hospital, which is 5 minutes away from us. Not the one I'm supposed to deliver at, but doesn't matter. I just drive. My husband stays here to wait for my mom to get here to be with the girls. I call my mom in a panic and say, we need you to come now. I'm going to the hospital because I'm bleeding. She gets up out of bed and starts to drive. I get to the hospital, they check me in, and, it takes some time, but they hook me up on the monitor and just kind of check out baby girl and see how she's doing. And that's all I wanted. I kept reiterating to them, I have an appointment tomorrow morning. I have to be there at 7 a.m. Like, please just make sure she's okay and send me on my way. I'll even drive there, like, right after this, but just please tell me everything's okay and, send me on my way. They hook me up. She sounds great. Her, heartbeat, all is well. The nurse that had originally checked me in was like, I don't think your water broke, but I'm just going to check before we, send you on your way. You do have an appointment tomorrow morning. So, but I just want to check to make sure your water didn't break. And I'm like, okay. So she swabs me, runs the test, and comes back like 2 minutes later and was like, so your water broke. And I'm like, oh, what? And she's like, I'm like, that's so weird. I didn't feel, and I guess it was a slow leak and it just had been leaking throughout the day. And she proceeded to tell me that they couldn't let me leave because I had ruptured. So, as some people can imagine, I was very upset just because I had this planned. I had a planned C-section. I had it scheduled, and they told me if I did leave, it would be against medical advice, and they didn't know how the insurance would work. And I don't know about any of you guys. I have seen delivery bills before insurance kicks in, or I'm like going through and then, oh, you see insurance kicks in and it is very expensive. So I did not want to be responsible for that. And when she told me that I couldn't leave and that I would have to have the baby there, I was very upset. I started crying. My husband was there at that point and he just said, like, everything's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. They're going to deliver the baby. It's fine. The most important thing is that she's okay. So they asked me what time I last ate, and it was about, I think I ate at like 9 p.m. I had up until midnight I could eat. And they're like, well, what did you eat? And the last 2 times that my water broke with my 2 previous, I had eaten soup. And let me tell you, I was starving throughout labor. So I made a good meal of meatloaf and mashed potatoes, and yes, I ate it. And they started laughing when I told them that I had meatloaf and mashed potatoes. And they said, well, we can't take you right now. So we're going to have to schedule it a little further out because, it's going to be a lot. You're going to have to digest that. And I said, okay. So they scheduled me for 4:30 a.m. surgery. And so basically I laid in bed for 4.5 hours. At that point, it was about midnight. And I'm just laying in bed. I couldn't get comfortable. I was so uncomfortable. But they did ask me if I wanted to go through with the C-section. Then I said, well, it depends on how much I'm dilated, I guess. If I'm at a 7, then sure, I might as well try and labor and try for a VBAC. But when they checked me, I was a 1. I wasn't even at a 2. And I just feel like because my body doesn't dilate well at all. So that was decided. I was going to go in for surgery at 4:30. So that rolls around. They come and get me. And this time I feel like even though it was planned, it was still, since it was a new environment, I was nervous. There were so many people in the operating room. I can't even tell you. The doctor was, there was another, she was teaching another student essentially. So there were 2 OBs, surgical techs. I feel like there were 5 of them. There were so many, and it just felt like a very hectic situation. So I was nervous at first, but I had a great nurse. She was amazing. She honestly made everything better. She kept me calm just because it was an environment that I wasn't aware of. And I just wasn't prepared for that, I guess, is the best way to put it. So they come and get me at 4:30. So surgery didn't start right at 4:30, but they're getting everything ready. I'm in the room. They're sanitizing everything. They start doing their thing, and they notice that my daughter is stuck. I'm really tall, I guess. So they say that the babies sit up high in my ribs. So she was up, stuck. If that makes sense. Her head was down, but so she was stuck up here. So getting her out was very difficult. I told my husband it felt like an elephant was pushing down on my stomach because they kept trying to push her down, and it was a lot. It hurt a lot. I felt a lot of it. And he took one picture. They told my husband to take pictures, and he was like, I don't feel comfortable doing it, but he took one picture, and I'll always I'll keep it, but it was such a horrible memory because the look on my face, I was so terrified. And the fact that she was stuck, I was just worried something was going to happen. Could she breathe? Could she not breathe? I don't know. I was just worried. So it took a while to get her out. It took about 20 or so minutes. from when they initially started the procedure, and I just was like waiting for my husband to be like, she's good. Like when they said she was out, I'm like, I looked over at my husband and he's like, she's okay, she's good. They had to use the vacuum to get her out because she was just lodged, I guess is the best way to put it, into my ribs. And when they pushed her, they had to use everything. They had to use the suction to get her out. So she was born at 5:07 a.m. and I was just glad that everything was okay. Was it ideal that I had to deliver at a hospital that I was unfamiliar with? No. But I feel like, again, like I said in my last video, the most important thing is getting your baby here safely. And while I wasn't comfortable with the environment that I was in, that's where I was supposed to be at that time, and that's how it was going to be to get my baby here safe. I obviously would have loved to deliver where I had before in the past, just because I feel like it would have been familiar for me. It was supposed to be planned in a scheduled C-section. That did not work out. I actually got a call the next morning, or not the next morning, later, a couple hours later, from the hospital where I was supposed to deliver her, and they're like, we're really concerned you didn't show up for your appointment. Is everything okay? And I'm like, oh, actually, she's already here. My water broke last night and I delivered her earlier this morning. And they're like, oh, okay. But just with that being said, I feel like everybody goes into delivery or labor and their pregnancies expecting these things, and my husband and I thought, yes, this is our third one, it's going to be a scheduled C-section, this is how it's going to go, and then bam, life just tells you otherwise. I didn't feel my water break, but I guess from all the things that I was doing during the day, it just broke and kind of just was like slowly trickling. And that's what happened. But as we were in the hospital, my husband was like Googling early signs of labor, and he's like, bleeding is an early sign of labor. And I'm like, oh, I knew that. But like when you see blood, you just panic. And I panicked and I drove to the nearest hospital, and that's where I ended up delivering my baby. If I would have just taken a few minutes, I guess, and kind of stopped, relaxed for a second, and was like, wait, bleeding is a sign of labor. Let's get our things, and we could have driven to our actual hospital where I was supposed to deliver at. But I guess just in that moment, you panic. I panicked, and my husband panicked, and he's like, let's just go. Like, let's get you to the hospital. Let them tell you she's good, and we'll go from there. But now that I know these things, maybe for baby number 4, if there is a baby number 4, I will know these things. And also, my OB did tell me that, so I delivered my daughter at 39 weeks and 3 days. My OB did tell me if I did have another baby and it was a scheduled C-section, she would not let me go past 39 weeks at all. Just because my water has broken now all 3 times. She doesn't want to chance that. So even if it's right at 39 weeks, that's when it's going to happen. She's not going to let me go past at all. So that's just something that I need to think about. And who knows, maybe I'll try for a VBAC this time, but we'll see. Anyways, if you guys have any questions about what I just shared, if you guys want to share some of your birth story, drop it in the comments, and make sure to subscribe. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.